Hey yo, Twisted here with Opener Sorcery, and today, as is usual, I'm joined here with my lovely co-host Devi, and today we're going to be going ahead and talking about the feast day in the Roman Catholic Church and the holiday of Michaelmas, which happens to generally be a celebration of angels, similar to that of how November 1st tends to be All Saints Day, November 2nd being All Souls Day. But yes, this is being recorded ahead of time of the holiday of Michaelmas, which I believe is September 29th.
Yes.
Um, yes. So, I think it's like a couple days beforehand, but you know, um, yeah, pretty much just going ahead and doing this. And if you happen to listen to the first video we did for this channel or podcast, whatever format you going ahead and checking it out with, you know, we went ahead and discussed how, in the creative process of this channel coming to be, the Archangel Uriel went ahead and made their presence a bit more so known to us on the day of Michaelmas in 2021 and being like, oh yeah, I want to help more. I want to help more because at that time, for myself and I believe Debbie included, that we were utilizing out of the four, usually ascribed archangels of the different cardinal directions and elements and such. Um, you know, Michael, which is Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, who tend to be featured in the actual Bible itself and kind of get a little more PR and exposure than Uriel does. Truth be told, we were utilizing them for different magical operations a little bit more. But Uriel was like, "Oh, I want to be a little more helpful. I want to go ahead and be utilized more." And with that, kind of came a bit more of a what would you say, Debbie? Like a more so of a closer bond, some sort of like what's a better wording to put it?
I would say it's like a guide and guardian making themselves known to us and being like, hey, I am here. I exist. Let me guide you. Like, this is my job. Let me do my damn job.
Oh, yes, exactly. So since then, we've gone ahead and utilized Archangel Uriel a bit more in our magical stuff, as well as, them being the patron deity of the YouTube channel because, thus far and into the foreseeable future, we cover different spiritual, lyrical, miracle, mystical, occult sort of topics and try to dispense, not only, what information we happen to know off the top of our brain from reading and other sources, but also personal anecdotes and just the sharing and bequeathing of knowledge, which Uriel happens to be all about.
Yeah.
And their description of use cases that I'm sure you can find in many different books out there and different videos online and stuff. But yes, and also one thing to go ahead and state as well, being that we didn't necessarily go ahead and cover it all too much in the first video, I believe, or maybe we did, but oh well, just in case we didn't. That Uriel happens to be a mercurial sort of like archangel, at least from our own attributions and findings, and that communicative process in of itself. But less about Uriel in particular, and Michaelmas is more so about all the different archangels, all the different angels, all the different entities that have that labeling and that affinity that, whether they're recognized by the Roman Catholic Church or whichever sort of denomination, whether they're Protestant or Orthodox or whatever the case may be, different denominations happen to recognize Michaelmas. Some don't. Some have particular angels and archangels that they're saying, oh, we're going to venerate them on this day or that. And truth be told, at least for me, and I'll let Debbie speak for herself on this, I don't give a damn about that sort of shit. Like, I'm not a particular denomination. So, I'm just going to use this as a day of, hey, look, whichever archangels and angelic entities we happen to work with that, are pleasant and happen to be of assistance, like you'll all get the recognition in some way, shape, or form, whether we say it or not. Just know that's part of the general, all-encompassing intention. Um, but yeah, so in that sort of sense, before I guess doing a bit of like a shout out, and all that sort of thing, I'll let Debbie go ahead and take up the talking of the more so history and background and the actual factual information of how Michaelmas came to be and all of that good old stuff. So there you go. Let me pass the baton over there.
Okay. Yes, baton is passed. Okay, but Michaelmas, this is supposedly the day that Michael, or venerating the day that Michael cast Lucifer out of heaven and cast him down to earth. So that is really what the celebration is all about. I will say it falls right near the autumn equinox for a reason, because as Christianity spread, having those same holidays but with a Christian undertone, it was important to the spread of the religious faith. So, autumn equinox really is the basis for it, and it makes sense. You think about autumn equinox, day and night are completely equal in this time, and from here we are going into the darker months where the light is fading, where darkness is winning in a sense. This is
Now, if
when
I may
go
interject
for it.
real quick, I just happened to think of something on the spot.
Hmm.
So, the fall season is what we're coming up with, right? In terms
Yes.
of the actual thing. And, the fall of Lucifer, the light in of itself fading. And, that sort of correlation just happened to pop in my mind. I thought it
Yes,
was
I
worth
actually had that
mentioning.
exact same
Yes.
thought earlier because there were several things I was reading and they were talking about like, oh, Archangel Michael, the angel of light, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Lucifer was
Well,
supposed to be the angel of light.
yes,
What are you
yes.
talking
And,
about?
I think they both are in different capacities. You know what I mean?
In different ways, I suppose.
Yeah.
And angels, physical forms and whatnot. Like it is what it is. Um,
Bickering brothers.
yes, bickering brothers. Um, but in terms of that, I had that exact same thought. Light is fading. The light came down. The morning star literally is falling, um, and darkness is taking over. Um, but during the equinox, we have, of course, this is typically like the harvest festivals. This is where, the end of the harvest season has come. People are celebrating, their bounty and abundance. Um, you know, for the Hellenistic practices, this is where Persephone is returning to the underworld. She is returning to Hades, and the earth is not necessarily barren because, of course, there's always going to be winter plantings and things of that nature, but it's a lot less fertile. Um,
Shout out
but
to Persephone, by the way.
yes,
Yes,
shout out to Persephone.
yes, yes.
Love that one. Um, although I'm probably gonna get smacked by her, honestly. I'll bet you. But but really this is that moment where the year is quartered, and it's that recognition that darkness is taking over, celebrating what we have, knowing our abundance, knowing our bounty, being able to have it for the darker months. Now Michaelmas particularly became kind of like one of those marking days of the quarter days for like England in particular, where people were paying their rent because apparently you would only pay rent quarterly. They were hiring servants, legal matters, and schools and everything would be starting. So it was a beginning, but also an end at new things. So, like we've talked about cycles and circumambulation and things like that. With every ending,
Yes.
there is a beginning. Um, apparently, it's traditional to eat goose, which is interesting. I don't think I've ever had a goose in my life. Not gonna lie.
Oh, me neither. By no means. Nope.
But apparently,
Not
like some of the renters would actually pay their rent in goose.
yet.
So it was said to be really good luck to have goose on Michaelmas because for the next coming year, that was your abundance. Um, but that's really it. It's not necessarily that, it was done to completely erase those older traditions, but it is an overlay onto it. And honestly, with the story of Michael coming down, or Michael casting Lucifer out of heaven and down onto earth, which I do have to put an addendum here. Apparently, Lucifer fell into a blackberry bush, and either he spit in it or he pissed on it. And blackberries
Yeah.
after after Michaelmas are not to be picked.
Well, truth be told, I'm not really into blackberry flavored things too much. Like, I don't know, like back in the day, I'd have some blackberry Coca Cola or something like that. Not really delve into the fruit in of itself. So, yeah, at least I won't necessarily have to worry about anything all too much. But for those out there who are into blackberry stuff, you might want to go ahead and be cautious if you're into that sort of thing or have any superstitions.
Oh yeah.
Believe in superstitions, I should say.
Yes. So apparently, after Michaelmas, blackberries are cursed. So either they've been cursed by Lucifer, they've been pissed on by Lucifer, or they've been spit on by Lucifer. All of which is hilarious to me. But I digress. Um, but in terms of that, that's really everything that I have in the history of Michaelmas and the history of, the equinox and the reasons why it has come about.
Well, I believe there's one thing you mentioned earlier before we went ahead and pressed the record button of essentially uh, the time that it was unrecognized
Mm.
and then officially adopted.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
you are correct.
yes.
That's what I get for not taking notes on that part. But apparently, it first appears in like the third century, AD, of course. Um, but it's not officially like written down and recognized until the fifth century. And there are, of course, accounts in the eighth century um, of it being adopted as a feast day instead of just like one of those. I'm trying to think of the word. This is where the retrograde gets me. My words, they're gone.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, you're
Instead of
good. You're good.
an official holiday, it was an unofficial thing before then. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
was something that was celebrated by the people, but not necessarily recognized or enforced by the church, because we know that the Catholic Church and all other churches of that time period, they were very strict, and if you did not participate, there was consequences.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so in recognition of it, it wasn't official, I believe, until fifth century, and then it was celebrated all the way up. It's not necessarily something that's celebrated like 100% now, because you were raised Catholic, correct?
On my mother's side of like my grandmother going ahead and taking me to like Catholic churches and different things of that nature, private school and
Mm-hmm.
all that. On my dad's side, less denominational, or
Mm-hmm.
you could say more so of like the in terms of like watching channels like TBN or anything like that, more so of like the Protestant, the evangelical, born again sort of
Mm-hmm.
have you, even though in terms of actually going to church was more so of a family sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of have a view of both lenses. But yes, in terms of Roman Catholicism, they actually, from my remembrance, don't really go ahead and teach it at in private school,
Mm-hmm.
nor go ahead and have it as a day where you go to mass whilst in private school, and don't really promote it all too much in terms of the lay folk coming in
Mm-hmm.
and being like, all right, we're gonna have this particular feast day. So it's one of those more so. Uh, there's definitely quite a few people who know about it who are Catholic, but at least in a particular parish that I happened to go at to as a child, participate in, they didn't really promote it all too much, from
Yeah.
what I remember.
And I will also put an addendum here that Eastern Orthodox, they also have a day of angels, like where they're recognizing angels, but they don't do so until November 10th. Um,
Oh yes,
so they
yes.
have something similar, but it's not until November. Um, but in terms of that, it kind of fell off. A lot of the literature that I was reading over it was pulling specific scriptures out and saying like, you know, don't venerate the angels, don't pray to the angels. The angels, of course, are sitting there saying, don't pray to us, pray to God. Everything's happening through Him. So I kind of take some of that with a grain of salt because they are supposed to be the
Yeah.
messengers, in a sense. And of course,
Well,
I am not Christian. I will say
oh
that.
yes.
Um,
Well, not presently, but similar to I, you also had a Christian background.
well,
You know,
yes,
that's correct.
like
Yes.
raised Southern Baptist, very much. But in the same token, like I've said, I've been practicing for 16 years and kind of
Oh yeah.
opened my eyes to it around the same age that you did. Um,
Oh yeah.
but you know, with those, I also have to figure that there is that element of control in the scripture from the church itself, um, because we know that those scripts were altered.
Well, yeah. Over time, different people translating from language to language or from variation of like from book to book.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the like, for example, there's so many different variations and versions, like the the very popular King James version or New King James version or New International version, so on and so forth. So even if it's not necessarily the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD where they went ahead and hand selected particular books of the Bible and of itself to be included in the official Old and New Testaments of the Christian choosing and variety, but then the various different offshoots of Christianity in of itself,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the different once again iterations and translations and so on and so forth, um, interpretations of the wording. So yeah, different different things, but the core ideas I think generally remain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think what was I gonna say? I kind of lost me on that particular train of thought because
Ah.
we went to a little bit of a detour of what I was thinking. But oh yes, yes. In terms of Eastern Orthodox and all that sort of thing, I don't know if they covered it over on his channel or not yet. But shout out to Jonathan Peugeot if you're interested in anything of Eastern Orthodox sort. Go check that out, and the book by his brother Mathieu Peugeot, Language of Creation, talking about the symbology of the Book of Genesis and all that sort of thing. Um, oh, I know what I was gonna say. In particular, when it comes to you saying like don't venerate the angels and that kind of being like a general guideline that's given within Catholicism or other variations of Christianity, while there is that sort of thing that is spoken about, and angelic being saying give glory unto God and so on and so forth, as is written. However, there are particular, angels, archangels. So those are the four cardinal directions. Those three that are mentioned in the Bible as stated before, so Michael, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, as well as Uriel, they have the title of saint in the Catholic Church. So, now when you go ahead and you talk about celebration of Michaelmas in of itself, they're usually referred to as Saint Michael or Saint Gabriel or Saint Raphael or Saint Uriel and all that sort of thing. And that being the title of veneration, still them going ahead and amongst all the other saints being like, all right, we are interceding, right? So when you pray to them and they're like, hey, look, can you go ahead and communicate to God on our behalf and so on and so forth, it is a means of intercession through that framework. So they're working as a medium, they're working as a messenger, a middleman for particular causes and purposes, hence patron saints,
Mm-hmm.
for example, as we were discussing however many days ago, St. Christopher, right? He was
Yes.
reading that one article. actually from the Symbolic World, a blog website associated with Jonathan Peugeot, as I just wanted to mention. But it was pretty much talking about the game Majora's Mask by a Nintendo, and kind of correlating it with the role of Saint Christopher and him being the patron saint of travel. So in that sort of sense, to use as an example, you would pray to Saint Christopher, right? And he's like, hey, let me go ahead and make sure that my family and I have safe travel. You know, what going to wherever the hell, I don't know, cabin in the woods for vacation or something, safe trip back. You go ahead and you pray, and they intercede. They work as a messenger, middleman, to get it up to upper management. Being Yahweh, Jehovah, all the different names of the Christian view of God and such. And that apparently is kind of like how the Catholics view the angels as well, operating, that they're doing that sort of interceding and serving as messengers from below to on high, and of course from on high to below as well,
Mhm.
um, all sort of thing. So the feast days in of themselves are a veneration, but with an asterisk. It's a celebration, but with the asterisk because of that understanding of, oh, yes, we recognize them, but all glory goes on to the Most High and that sort of thing, as just opposed to a singular sort of, oh, yeah, this particular entity, or just go ahead and venerate them because they're the end all be all
Mhm.
and all of that. But yeah, so at this point, we've covered the background of it. A little bit of semantics in terms of Catholicism and other religions, and a lot of different other pieces of information. But yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and give some of these entities, some time on the sun, some good old spotlight time. 15 minutes. Granted, they definitely deserve more than 15 minutes. And I will say that in regards to their manner of consciousness and awareness and perception, that, 15 minutes isn't truly 15 minutes. And it's more so of a doesn't really matter sort of thing. It's going to be in a different perspective, kind of from the outside looking in, I guess, to put it in our human language. But in any case, so as mentioned before throughout the video, there's Mikael, there's Raphael, there's Gabriel, there's Uriel, you know, who this feast day usually is attributed to. But not only them, we got Metatron, who has bequeathed a particular name for Devi and I to utilize, and that sort of thing a while back. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and, uh, starting off with Metatron, go down the Kabbalistic tree of life and name drop the rest of them that haven't been mentioned that are associated with it. So starting off from the top in Keter, that's Metatron. Then the next sphere is Raziel. Then you got Zafkiel. Then Zadkiel, Kamael, Haniel, and of course Sandalphon. Which is the earthly sphere. And also taking the time out, I believe it may have been mentioned a couple times in previous videos, but Metatron and Sandalphon are both believed to be the angelic forms and transformations of the prophets Enoch for Metatron and Elijah for Sandalphon, from the Bible in of itself. So, you know, technically, you can say based on that caveat, they're kind of saints in of themselves of having a humanly form before becoming angelic, which, truth be told, honestly, is more so chicken or the egg sort of debate in that sense. But um, continue on with this kind of like list I have right here, of like some like entities that we have worked with, or at least mentioned on channel thus far. I guess I'll go towards like the videos that have been made. I guess part of the Angelic Public Relations series that it was kind of like at the beginning of the video run so far, and hasn't really been touched upon in terms of individual videos being made for particular entities yet, but obviously that could be something that's returned to. And whenever topics pop up, we name drop anyway. So, you know, but in that sense, we have Nitika, an angel who is associated with crystals and gemstones and spiritual wealth. And let me just go ahead and say it once again, in case you haven't checked out the other video, does not want to be associated with monetary wealth or gain and being utilized for that. As they made sure to let Devi and us know,
Yes. Oh my
communicate to
gosh.
y'all. Yes, because a lot of folks out there, because they go ahead and read particular books that promote them as such, that's not like going ahead and approaching the entity themselves and being like, oh, yes, this is what you can go ahead and use me for, and being considerate of, what their particular affinities are. That's just, going ahead and running with, whatever people want to ascribe them to. So, in that sort of sense, check out that video, of course, if you want to hear that in particular, even though I pretty much summed it up right there. Um, but yeah, spiritual wealth, spiritual gain, and or crystal work or gemstones or anything like that, not monetary financial stuff. And also, while they're considered a fallen angel and such, since we went ahead and did the one video as a sort of like, hey, look, they popped up to us when we were doing bibliomancy one time. They explained there. Shout out to Mastema. You know what I mean? Hopefully they are on the up and up and are trying to go down the redemptive path as they went ahead and explained to Debbie and I and shared their intent in wanting to you know go ahead and be seen in a different light and such. Hopefully they're going ahead and doing that. And of course, Azrael, who I would say is one of my particular guides and helped me out quite a bit ever since their introduction to me. And I covered that in a particular video about Azrael as well. And I'm sure Debbie can go ahead and say for herself that, based on, her interactions with them, that, he's a good old boy that helps during sad times
Oh
and
yeah.
all that.
Oh yeah. That is definitely one of those that I keep in the back pocket. I'm like, ah yes. Angelic grief counselor, got to.
Yes, yes. Let's see. So as far as I can go ahead and remember, I guess what other things to say. This name is a little bit more obscure in the sense of not belonging to a particular group, as far as I'm aware. But one we happen to work with like once, or at least maybe I think it was just myself that went ahead and did this once, was Nathaniel, um, and all that. And also want to go ahead and take a moment to say shout out to Amnitio, who it's kind of like one of those ones we have utilized for the different signs of the zodiac and the progression of it for moons, like, full moon rites and rituals and stuff. But is I would say that since they are associated with the sign of Pisces and just based on their general description and Pisces being an all-encompassing sort of sign in of itself, you could say serves like a Swiss Army knife sort of archangel that can assist with a great many things. Now, that's not to say that other angelic forces or entities can't serve with a great deal many things more so than say what little sentences and blurbs are written down in books and videos and descriptions and all that. But you know um yeah, definitely more so in nature with the sign of Pisces itself. And then just generally speaking, um you know not gonna go through all the names or anything like that, but shout out to the archangels of the zodiac and all that, except for one particular. Not gonna name them.
Mm-mm.
That is very much a goetic demon that has been anglicized and jealousized. But yeah, not gonna go ahead and do that. But yeah, so shout out to 11 out of the 12, I will say. And in terms of the 72 to Shem Hamefarash, I do not know exactly how many of them I have gone ahead and called upon, but it's a good chunk of them. I'm not sure if it's been all 72 yet, but a good chunk of them at least. Um, and there's different sorts of groups such as the Angels of Virtue and Angels of Thrones, and different sorts of classifications of seraphim and ophanim and cherubim and all that. A lot of names, a lot of semantics, a lot of stuff. But generally speaking, any of these angels that myself or Debbie have worked with beforehand or have yet to work with or anything like that. This is for y'all. This is just a sign. This is us going ahead and giving the airtime, the appreciation towards y'all. And I know I've been talking quite a bit, but I'll go ahead and let Debbie speak on, her thoughts about that sort of thing. I wanted to show appreciation and all that.
Well, yes, and of course, the night of Michaelmas, we will definitely be doing a kind of thank you ritual for them. But of course, with the angels that we have worked with, we are exceedingly grateful. And quite frankly, they're hilarious, and we enjoy their company greatly. Um, Having them come into our space and out, it's been interesting and quite a growth process. Um, but yeah, very grateful.
Oh yeah, and I know that you've remarked that like prior to like I don't know, say like a bit like a year and a half ago, like you didn't utilize any angelic entities beforehand
Mm-mm.
whatsoever or anything like that.
No,
That's
it's really when I
yeah.
started working with you that all of a sudden it was like a door open and it's just like, oh hey, you were supposed to be doing this, and I'm just like, oh, well I didn't, but thank you. So so I mean, it's
Oh
been a
yeah.
learning process and introductions and things like that. But no,
Oh
I
yeah.
had been working mostly with um, Hecate and Persephone and you know deities of that nature versus angels.
Oh yes. Well, to touch upon that just a little bit before I guess rounding this out and closing it out, I think that kind of has to do with and even though I and myself became more self familiar or were familiar before we started working together and all this sort of thing, we both in our own ways kind of like were like, all right, Christianity in of itself is kind of being pushed upon us in some way, shape, or form by
Mm-hmm.
family and all that. So we went exploring in different other things, whether you know to whatever extent we had our own sort of like um, negative or positive views of it as an institution, or like just particular family members going ahead and being very pushy and persistent of like, yes, Christianity is the only way and all that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. This I see as like kind of like a hey, look, you don't have to go ahead and throw the baby out with the bathwater. That it's here, it's, from a spiritual, metaphysical sense, they don't give a damn about the dogma. They don't care about the human semantics of it. They are operating, existing regardless, and all that, and are able to be called upon for assistance and all that. So, regardless of which path you happen to walk on, whether you come from Christianity in a background sense or not, you know, these are entities that can be utilized and called upon. And I guess for both of us, along our own paths, this is kind of like a integration of what came prior and all that sort of thing, as opposed to just like, oh, we're gonna reject this part of ourselves, you could say,
Yeah.
because it's what existed beforehand, and just being like, all these things can coexist, all these things can be helpful, all these things can go ahead and be used to our benefits and the mutual benefit of not only ourselves but those around us that we interact with
Yes.
and all.
I would definitely agree with that. Although I will say, like, the Baptist Church, uh, they don't do like any kind of veneration of anything but God. So
Oh yeah.
it's a little bit different. Little bit different.
Oh oh yes, as opposed to the more so I guess Catholic approach of there being many different
Mm-hmm.
many different you know consciousnesses and entities, saints, angels that you can go ahead and call upon for assistance. And in a sense, while not promoting themselves as such, works as a quasi sort of I'm trying to think of a particular term. What is it when there's more than one god in a belief system?
Polytheistic.
Yes, there we go, as opposed to monotheistic.
Yes.
So, yes, and it works as quasi polytheism in that sort of sense while trying to state that, the Trinity, the logos of, God the Father, Christ, and the Holy Spirit are all facets of the same sort of thing and
Hmm.
all that. But alas, that's probably a discussion for another time as we're particularly supposed to be focusing on Michaelmas, but we already covered that. And this is just, over time. This is bonus stuff. But
This
I
is
guess.
just us going off on tangents like we normally do.
Oh yes, yes, of course, yes. But in any case, yes. So I guess to go ahead and wrap it up. Any last thoughts on Michaelmas itself?
I mean, not particularly. I think I've kind of exhausted everything that I had.
Oh, gotcha. Or how about any sort of last messages for the moment to make to the angelic entities that we actually have to call upon um, before recording this to be like, hey, look, you guys want to be a part of the audience, and as Debbie mentioned before, this is being recorded during Mercury retrograde during September of 2022. So call on Uriel in particular to be like, hey, look, let's make sure that there's no communication issues or anything like that getting in the way. But yes, so with them and or however many different angelic entities are here, are aware, and to whatever sort of uh, tangible or intangible extent, you got any final words to share with them? What have you?
I'm just grateful. They know that I am grateful. Like, I'm literally, like, of course, looking at them with my mind's eye, and they're all just sitting here, like, okay.
Oh yes, and I will just say for myself as well, to all the angelic entities that were named earlier or not necessarily named or anything like that. Y'all the homies. We appreciate the assistance that you provide not only for ourselves but for anybody who's looking for assistance. And yeah, this is yes, this is one of those offerings, one of those signs of appreciation that hopefully um, you guys go ahead and are pleased with. And, obviously the correspondence shall continue. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, and that sort of thing, tongue tied. Yeah, but in that sort of vein, I should say. Yeah, so this has been Twisted and
Devi,
pointing at you. Yes. With open sorcery and stay frosty, niggas. Peace.
have a great night, y'all.